All right, Betty, let's pull it down. Good morning, everybody. So welcome to the Art of the Deal negotiation. My name is D. Wilmore. I'm the head of agent development here at Radius Agent. Thank you all for taking some time to come and spend with me this morning. Let's go ahead and jump right into this. So some of you may be familiar with the song we were just playing. It's called Lose Yourself, a song by an artist by the name of Eminem. Some of you may have heard of him, some of you have not. So I'll tell you, I find that to be a very powerful song for a couple of reasons. It's not just because it has that driving beat and that strong hook that kind of gets your toe tapping. It's a lot more than that. So as the song opens up, it says, if you had one shot, one opportunity to seize everything that you ever wanted in one moment, what would you do? Would you capture it or would you let it slip away? Right? That describes a lot of our business. Do we capture it? Do we let it slip away? The song is also very powerful in the sense that it talks about him overcoming fear to reach his objective. Right off the bat, he talks about how he was nervous, he vomited on himself. More specifically, he vomited his mother's spaghetti. So very descriptive in its language, but it talks about overcoming fear to achieve your objection. And that's your objective, not your objection. That's what makes that song so powerful to me. It's not the music, it's not the lyric all by itself, but it's the message behind it. And that's what we hope to convey to you. That all speaks to how we deal with a negotiation. So can everybody relate to that kind of emotion? We're driven by fear. And a lot of times the things that we do are also driven by fear. So today, as we talk about over the art of the deal, the art of negotiation, we'll talk a lot of ways of overcoming fears and becoming better practitioners in the things that we do on a daily basis. Sound fair? Remember earlier I said, guys, make sure you use the chat box. If you just jumped on, open up your chat box and just type in yes so that I know you're all with me. Awesome. Very good. Very good. Good to see you guys. All right. So when we talk about negotiating, negotiating is really about communication. Would everybody agree with that? Go ahead and respond in the chat box. Absolutely. Negotiation is really all about effective communication. There's a gentleman by the name of Victor Kiam. Victor Kiam was ultimately a salesman. He's probably what's known as a salesman, but he was a serial entrepreneur for many decades. He started off as he started off in the United States Navy, ended up working as a salesman for a big company and subsequently bought that company. That company was called Remington Razors. As a matter of fact, his slogan was, I like the product so much, I bought the company. He had a belief in not only his product, but himself. And he went on later to own the New England Patriots. So really big guy, but essentially a self-made man who recognized what the power of negotiation was. And one interesting quote I find that he said, which was, a negotiator should observe everything. You must be part Sherlock Holmes and part Sigmund Freud. And realistically, what he's talking about is he's talking about situational awareness. He's talking about being aware of your surroundings and all the intangibles that we might not recognize immediately, but that are important to the negotiation and to the deal itself. And also the ability to be able to analyze the data that you're receiving. So part Sherlock Holmes, part Sigmund Freud. And that, to me, describes a negotiator to almost its nth degree. He's got a couple books out. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the books he's got out, which are Going For It and Live to Win. They've been in publication for a while. I think I read Live to Win sometimes in the late 80s, early 90s, but it's a great read if you guys get a chance to do that. As I said last class, those of you who were with me in the last webinar, get your reading list together. It's important that as you guys start to develop your business model, that you read something real estate every day. Part of the reason that some of you are attending this webinar is just a refresher for some of the things that you already know. And some of you are actually learning or trying to impart a new skill. So make sure you're doing something real estate every day, reading a little piece of something, an article online, a new book, and it doesn't necessarily have to be real estate related. but certainly get your knowledge base up as we move forward. Okay. So what's on our agenda today? We're going to talk about the qualities of a good negotiator, more tips on effective communication. We'll cover, the basics of negotiation strategies. We'll identify our buyer and seller motivation. We'll talk a lot about active listening and managing the objection. And hopefully some of the things you'll take away are the development of effective relationship management, understanding your client's goals, objection handling, and becoming a more effective closer. So in the chat, who wants to close more deals? There should only be one answer. Absolutely. Me, yes, me, absolutely. We all want to close more deals, but there are simple hurdles that get in our way. When we talk about negotiating, we mostly function in a simple negotiation process. Most of us aren't doing big, very complex deals, but some of those strategies that a negotiator or a strategist would use in a big, more complicated deal also apply in these day-to-day negotiations that we have. And we have multiple negotiations in any one transaction. So as we start to look at negotiation, we talk about people being natural-born salespeople or natural-born negotiators. I tend to disagree with that on most levels except for one. So in my opinion, negotiators are made just like salespeople are made, right? These are skills that are learned over time and practiced repetitively until we have a level of perfection to where we can execute these things with routine behavior going forward. It's very difficult to just automatically assume. You may have a great skill in order to engage others, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have an influencer capability to affect change as you meet that other person. So great negotiators are made, they're not born. And they're confident people most of the time, people who can engage others fairly readily in an interview style or in just a conversational style at ease. That confidence goes a long way. People respond to confidence. It speaks to you knowing exactly what you want to talk about or what the subject matter may be, or you've defined your objective and you're not at all afraid to go for it. Okay. It's kind of like that, the book I was just sharing with you, Daring to Win. So negotiators, the best negotiators on the planet are children. Can anybody tell me why in the chat? Why are children the best negotiators on the planet? Some of you have children, some of you have raised children, some of you are going through it right now. Little fear, absolutely. They're persistent. Good comments, guys. Children don't have any fear because they don't know any better. They're innocent, right? They get straight to the point. Absolutely. I resonate with all of you parents because it's clear you've had children. So children are the best negotiators because they don't take no for an answer. How many of you walk away from either a listing appointment or a buyer's appointment and you took the no? That meant that person was a better negotiator than you because you walked away with a pocket full of zeros, right? And it's very easy to say, well, they said no, they're not ready right now. When do you know a child to ever do that? Children employ tactics that they don't even know they're employing, right? They do conditional closes. Mom, you said if I did this, you would do this. If I do this, can I still have that? Right? That's an example of a conditional close. You want me to be happy, right? That's an example of something called a tie down, which we'll cover later. But children don't take no for an answer. Their goal is clearly defined, right? We can all acknowledge that. Their goal is laser focused. They know exactly what they want and they know what to do to get it. And they're on a mission. That's their sole purpose, is to achieve that ultimate outcome. And they anticipate the outcome. So they know, let's face it, guys, if a child wants something, they will bug you. Please, mom, please, dad, please, mom, please, dad, please, 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 please. I'll do this, I'll do anything. And they anticipate that outcome because they know if they bother you long enough, you're going to do what? You're going to give in, right? You're going to say, oh my God, all right, here you go. Just shut up. Just go. That's what happens. We love them to death, but that ends up what happens. what ends up happening. So as we talk about great negotiators, it's important to understand what your potential is. What's your power? What are you bringing to the table? How much leverage do you have? Are you in a leveraged position at all? We're going to use that word a lot today, that leveraged position. But do you have anything on your side that you can negotiate with? And the answer is yes. We always have something on our side that we can negotiate with, even if it feels like we don't. Keep in mind that negotiations are dynamic, right? It's a strategic framework that we like to employ in order to achieve a favorable outcome. So, as you're understanding your potential, you're also going to recognize that you're going to do a lot of listening. We talked earlier about that active listening skill, and we'll get more into that. Let's make sure our objective is clearly defined. Sometimes we go into a negotiation and we're not sure what we're really asking for or what we really want. Can anybody relate to that sentiment? Has anybody ever gone into a negotiation, both consciously or unconsciously, and really didn't know what it was you were asking for? Right? I'll bet a lot of you have gone into that situation, right? You're afraid of being rejected. You're afraid of the no, so you didn't really have a clear outcome. You just knew that you were there. So you had to continue to facilitate something, some level of conversation or something like that. It's important to define your objective no matter how small the negotiation is, right? Even if it's for a stick of gum, define your objective. Why do you want that gum? Do I just want to chew it? Do I want to keep my mouth busy? Do I need something sweet? Am I dehydrated? Is my mouth parched? Right? Define your objective. And as we look at knowing that great negotiators are made, what are those traits that really make up a great negotiator? I'll bet you most of you have these skills, you just don't know it because you don't employ them on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, right? And again, I said earlier, negotiators are made. So they practice these skills every day, whether it's in a live or active negotiation or just simply role playing with a peer or a partner so that you can hone and define these skills to their perfect point, okay? Some traits of a successful negotiator is being realistic. Again, just as we were talking about defining your objective, guys, sometimes we're just not realistic as to what our ask is. Since we haven't really defined our objective, we really don't know what our want is. What is our want? So a successful negotiator is realistic. They have high self-esteem, right? Confidence, self-esteem, hand in hand. That's true in any interaction that you have with a human being outside of yourself. There has to exist a level of confidence. Keep in mind, anytime when we're interacting with others, our personal selves and our public selves intertwine over only slightly. They overlap a bit. So we're bringing a bit of our personality and who we are into every public transaction we ever come across. So that helps with the self-esteem because we're not asking you to disclose or expose all of your flaws or your vulnerabilities, but we are asking you to bring a little of you to the table so that the other negotiator can create moments of potential collaboration, okay? Intelligence, again, it goes with being part Sherlock Holmes, being part Sigmund Freud, being aware of everything that's being asked of you. What is this deal really about? Who are the players in this deal, right? Sometimes I always identify who the players are. We go with the obvious, and it must be this seller or it must be this buyer. And there are other stakeholders who also have commitment in this process. So that goes in that intelligence bucket, which is really kind of identifying everything and analyzing, is this deal really something solid or necessary, right? Flexibility. So just as we're talking about with children, we know that children are relatively inflexible when it comes to their needs, but we as negotiators, right, we know that we have to be flexible. The outcome is never about us, but it's about the worth of the deal. Is this deal actually worth pursuing? And if it is, how flexible am I to get to where we all need to be? Not just me, not just them, but us, right? And along with that flexibility, we exercise patience, right? We need to be in the moment, but we also need to be patient as we start to employ some of our strategies in order to have success or that win-win dynamic. And obviously, going along with the confidence and the self-esteem, you have to be assertive, right? You have to know what it is that you're doing, know why you're doing it, and let it be known. I talked in our last webinar about being a secret agent. Sometimes we go into a negotiation, we're undefined, we're unclear, we're underconfident, and we're less than assertive. And it's no wonder that the outcome is less than favorable, because we didn't define anything that we were hoping to define as we moved into that negotiation. And again, sometimes negotiations are unplanned or not purposeful. A negotiator also possesses a high degree of emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is your ability to maintain your emotions under difficult or stressful situations. Sometimes we become extremely reactive. We get our feelings hurt, right? A successful negotiator, as they exercise their emotional intelligence, they have the ability to accept criticism and take responsibility for their actions. They have the ability to be able to move on after they've made a mistake. How many of you sit and perseverate on the fact that you made a mistake and I screwed up this deal and oh my God, it'll never be any better? And you're thinking about it days, weeks, months after the fact. At that point, in all honesty, it no longer becomes a learning opportunity. It becomes a pity party. And the truth is that you're going to go through multiple negotiations throughout your career. As I said before, one deal could have multiple negotiations. We're negotiating for different things. Being able to say no when you need to is part of your emotional intelligence. Don't be afraid of the no. Sometimes we get into that in our own personal lives. We're afraid of the no. Be able to share your feelings with others. That goes along with what I was just saying is anytime you're interacting with someone in a public space, you're sharing a part of your personal self. It overlaps with your public self. So be okay to share a little bit about you with others and be able to solve problems in a way that works for everyone. You hear me talk a lot about this, which is that win-win dynamic, right? That win-win is everything. As realtors, we naturally feel somewhat competitive, right? And the truth of it is there's no need to be competitive with another realtor when it comes to a transaction. You have someone who wants to buy and someone who wants to sell, or vice versa, someone who wants to sell and someone who wants to buy. So it should always be a win-win dynamic. There are just little moments within that dynamic that we have to work out, things like price and terms and things like that. But we should always be focused on both parties winning. We want the seller to be happy, we want the buyer to be happy, and we want the other agent to be happy. Who knows? We all know that this business is a relatively small business the longer you stay into it, and you're going to run into that practitioner again and again. So you want them to have a favorable view of you, just as you want the buyer and the seller to as well, because that affects how we receive referrals and how we continue to do business. Okay. We want to employ active listening skills. Guys, sometimes we get just locked into talk. Can we just shut up sometimes, right? Negotiations isn't about how much word salad I can vomit on you. It's about me understanding exactly what it is that you're asking of me so that I can respond correctly, so that we can create a dialogue and a collaboration that happens for each one of us mutually. If I'm doing all the talking and it's about me, chances of success are small because you're going to create adversarial positioning, which is not effective for anyone. And that's not a part of effective communication. When it's about me, there's no bilateral movements. It's a unilateral statement, and we get to the point to where it's all or nothing, right? And oftentimes we get in those positions too early or too soon where it's all or nothing, and those are never effective strategies, okay? Again, I was talking about the power of silence. Listen more, talk less. It's okay to do more with less. State your purpose, state what you'd like an anticipated outcome to look like, and shut up so you can hear what the other side is actually asking of you. Okay? Be okay to embrace the pause. Some of us are uncomfortable with silence. Have any of you ever been in a room with someone that you don't know very well, or even someone you do, like a spouse or a family member, something like that, and you feel compelled to talk just because the silence is deafening, right? That's one of those traits that happens to all of us, or a lot of us. And the truth is sometimes it's okay to be comfortable with the silence, right? That silence is just as powerful as words. Be okay with the silence. Embrace the pause. Ask defining questions. Again, as we get more specific with what our needs are, our needs analysis, we need to ask some very defined questions so that we can get enough data so we can generate at least a plausible outcome, or the results for a plausible outcome. And don't get attached to the results. Guys, along with that same me, sometimes we get so hyper focused on what we want the outcome to look like, we're attached to those results. And as we talk about emotional intelligence, then we tend to perseverate if the outcome was less than, or those results were less than favorable than what we were hoping them to be. So don't get attached to the results. Don't get married to the results. Sometimes it ends up being that it just didn't work out. Rarely should that happen, but sometimes it does end up that way. Start to be more strategic than reactive. Each one of these methods works, and each one is a viable way of negotiating, either reactive or strategic. But strategic allows for you to be more open, to be more flexible. It allows for the other party to be more responsive to you in a positive way. Sometimes when we're reactive, we're very closed off. We're asking closed-ended questions. We keep reasserting our facts and our position as very rigid and lack of movement. Whereas a strategic plan, which is something that is in the word itself, planned out. We're planning our behavior. So a strategic approach to negotiation is one that comes from a learned position, because we're doing a little research in advance. Why is the seller asking for a reduction? Or why is this buyer asking for a piece of my commission? Or, you know, whatever events that you run into on a daily basis. The most common negotiation I think that most of you experience is when you're going on a listing appointment. That listing appointment creates all kinds of anxieties for everybody involved. You're meeting a stranger for the first time. You're in their home to where there's a deal of control, or we feel like they have leverage in a sense. We're unclear if there are other players in the game, either other stakeholders in the house itself or other competitors that may swoop in behind you if you end up not being successful at your appointment. So we worry about those things, but we plan these things out through strategic behaviors like pulling up a very articulate and detailed comparative market analysis so that we can show or share with the seller the fact that, you know, pricing is what it is. But most often what we're negotiating for is our own worth. We're negotiating our commission with that seller. Well, why should I pay you this when I can get this? It's part of that principle of substitution. Is everybody familiar with the principle of substitution? Go ahead in the chat. If you're yes, no, or I don't know, it's fine. Yes, no, or I don't know. Yep, absolutely. Some of you are yes, 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 no. All right. So what that principle of substitution is I'm not going to pay more for something when I can get the same thing of equal value for the same price or less with undue delay. So am I going to have to wait for something? So if I've got somebody directly behind me that says, oh, okay, well, he said he'll do it for 5%, I can do it for 4%. You know, that seller is kind of exercising the principle of substitution. So a strategist exercises or employs their sense of self-worth to the seller almost immediately. This is where my value is this is how I come into the table. These are the things that you can expect from me, and here's why, okay? So a strategist is someone who plans out their negotiation in advance. That way they're coming to the table armed with knowledge. Be okay to employ vulnerability and collaboration. So as I said earlier, part of our public self is overlapped by our private self. Be a real human being in your negotiation. Be okay to expose a bit of yourself. Now, it doesn't mean share your life story and ramble on and talk about all the things that are important to you and all the things you've done and blah, 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 because you can quickly turn from a negotiation to I'm trying to create a friend relationship. How many of you have ended up on that path, that friend relationship? Oh, they really, really liked me. They should call me in a few days, and you never hear from them again. That's because we were trying to avoid the fear of rejection. As we opened up that Eminem song, "Lose Yourself," that song is really about fear avoidance. We've got to push through the fear every single day. And as we come into future webinars, some of the things we'll talk about just as you're developing your leads are pushing past the fear. Got to pick up the phone, guys. So this all kind of ties in together. So be okay to be vulnerable and collaborative. Okay. Can't stress enough, avoid the me. Some of you are so focused on me, 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 me. I have to be successful in this. I have to make this about me. I've got to win this deal. And we do it for various reasons. It's not because we're selfish or we're self-centered or any of the above. It's more specifically to the fact that our fear is right in our throat. And so we feel like if we can't be successful in this, then that's going to hinder our performance for future behavior, future occurrence. And the truth is, it's not. Again, active listening, really understanding what the objective is, what is the other person asking of you, what are their needs, how can you best serve their needs. Those are all the best ways to begin as you're looking at developing your strategic behavior. Okay. As we talk about key communication skills, we talk about the principles of communication. I can't stress enough the self-esteem. Guys, be confident and deliberate in the actions that you do on a daily basis. It speaks volumes to who you are as a person, as an individual, as someone in your professional community. You're wanting to establish your level of expertise early on. That's part of your self-esteem. Again, that's why I recommend that each and every one of you read something real estate based every day. Hire a coach. If you're not sure where to get a coach, reach out to me after this. I'd love to meet with all of you if you haven't met with me yet on a one-to-one. That way we can talk about and help you to overcome some of the things that you're going through right now. So don't be afraid to get on my calendar. My contact information will be listed at the end of this presentation. Okay. Listen and respond with empathy. Let the other person know that you know what they're going through, that you can relate, that you get what's going on, right? Again, if we're still pushing the me, we don't have a clue as to what's going on. Ask for their help. Again, with that collaboration piece, when we involve others in our process or the process that we're going through, they tend to be more involved and more accepting of the ideas that you present. Ask for their help and encourage them to participate. That goes a very long way in effective communication. That's your opportunity to engage in the conditional close. Again, sometimes when somebody gives you an objection, and that objection is 9 times out of 10 irrational or has no real purpose or basis in fact, sometimes a conditional close is something that helps to bridge that gap. So, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, if I do this thing, could we do this thing? It also creates a level of accountability for both parties. You've defined something you're willing to do, and you're asking them, are they willing to do something else, right? That creates that level of accountability, which walks you closer to a yes than a no. And again, part of negotiating is creating more yes strategies. Make procedural suggestions during the consultation process. Again, as we talk about types of closes, and some of you are very familiar with this, I'm a huge fan of the assumptive close. Assume that you are already in business with them before you're in business with them. Make procedural suggestions so that they understand that this is the process and they're willing to participate. A good example would be on a listing appointment. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I notice you've got a lot of clutter in this room, or you've got a lot of big, beautiful pieces. When we put this house on the market for sale, do you have a place to where we can store these items other than the garage, right? That's an example of a conditional close. Very simple negotiation, but a negotiation nonetheless, right? Because they're still living in that environment. And now you're talking to them about going outside of their comfort zone and being reductive and taking away the things that they've been used to on an ongoing process. But that procedural suggestion goes a long way into creating the yes, because you're causing them to know that an event is about to happen, and that's listing the house. Everybody agree with that? Okay. So how do we negotiate the deal? First of all, we have to identify who we're negotiating with. Most of you go into a negotiation without knowing who are the players in the room, or who are the players that are attached to this deal. It could be another vendor. If it's a bigger deal, it could be a seller who is also involved with buying a property somewhere else, and they haven't yet identified that, or they have identified that and there's another stakeholder in another city, another state, another town. So who are you negotiating with? Because the strategies are different. Are you negotiating with a buyer? And what is it that you're negotiating with a buyer specifically? Again, we talk about flexibility, but sometimes a buyer saying, I'll use you, they give you an all or nothing statement. I'll use you only if you give me a part of your commission. Immediately, we don't employ emotional intelligence, but we become more reactive, and our back bristles and we're like, oh my God, I don't want to give up my money, but I also haven't had a deal in 2 months, right? So we tend to say, okay, well, at least I'm getting paid something. So guess what? We start to negotiate with ourselves without really even understanding why the buyer is asking for a piece of that money, okay? The other thing is the establishment of price. We get into that buyer behavior right now. Most of your markets are such that there are multiple offers. There are many all-cash offers, things like that. And all-cash offers are easy to combat. As a matter of fact, Radius Agent Realty, we've got an all-cash offer program that helps to win that cash situation. So that should never be an issue. But sometimes our buyers are afraid or unwilling to meet the terms in order to facilitate success for that particular transaction. In other words, the seller may ask, okay, well, you know, a lot of you use this expression, highest and best. I've never really understood what that meant, because highest and best is very vague. It doesn't mean anything to me. Well, my highest and best right now is this. Why am I going to give you $10,000 more when your seller would have taken $10,000 less? I don't know that, right? So sometimes we're negotiating with the buyer just to stay in the deal as a result of price or terms. Those negotiations should never be adversarial. Oftentimes we create that adversarial position because we dig our heels in. We become more reactive. The buyer becomes more reactive. And we as the professionals, the minute we're reactive, it's like a child responding to a parent running in the fight or flight moment, right? The child just starts running. They don't know why, but they see a person in authority running in a different direction. So they want to make sure that they avoid harm. So when your client sees that you're walking straight into the face of harm and you're reactive, in other words, emotional, then they become emotional. And that's when that deal starts to spiral. Who's been in that circle before? In the chat, I'm sure a few of you have. It's never a pleasant position to be in. We also run into that same circle with sellers. Sometimes we're negotiating our fee. Guys, part of being prepared is knowing what your worth is. In our last session, we talked about business planning. Part of that business planning is knowing your worth, right? If you've identified a financial outcome that you're wanting to achieve for the remainder of 2021 and into 2022, it's also establishing your value, establishing your worth, right? And every time you go into a listing presentation, know what your worth is. Sure, there are plenty of people who will do it for less, but can they do it better? There are $2,000 attorneys an hour, and there are $200 an hour attorneys. Recognize the difference, because I guarantee a $2,000 an hour attorney is not reducing his fee because they know their worth. A $200 attorney is more likely to reduce their fee because they're trying to get more business. So establish that dynamic in advance. Do your research, do your homework, practice every single day, right? Sometimes it's not about the price, but it's about the terms and the listings. Immediately with a listing negotiation, we almost always start to negotiate against ourselves before the seller has even said word one, right? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I normally charge 6% or 5%, but if you list with me today, I'll take 4.5, or I'll do 4. How quickly do you need to move? right? And the seller hasn't said anything. You've already started the negotiation unilaterally without the other party even giving you any opposition. Again, that speaks to you knowing your worth. If you know your worth, you can avoid those danger signals every single time. Remember what I said? Learn to shut up, practice the art of silence, respect the pause. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, my listing fee is X. And then move on. Continue to use assumptive language to close the deal. Let the seller come back later on and say, wait a minute, you said your listing fee was 5%. Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, keep in mind, I still have to pay another party, and we've got a lot of things to do to make sure we get you the X amount of money that you're hoping to get and move you into the property where you're wanting to be in other city, other state, wherever they're going, right? These are practiced behaviors. Guys, if you're not familiar with scripts and dialogues, get on board with it. I do a great scripts and dialogues class. Again, if you get with me on a one-to-one, we can start to review that. Make sure you get on my calendar at the end of this presentation, okay? Sometimes we're negotiating with the opposing agent, which should be rare, guys. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but we should never really be negotiating with the other agent. Excuse me. Excuse me. The other agent is our friend, right? We're both in the same business to get the same outcome. I've got somebody who wants to buy, you've got someone who wants to sell. If the other agent is adversarial, they're showing you their fear hand, right? Be okay to be vulnerable in that situation and collaborative. Oh my gosh, wow, you're coming at me very aggressively. Listen, what is it going to take for your seller to accept our offer? What are the things that they want? Does your seller need a rent back? Can we do this? We'll pay for this. Will your seller be willing to do this? Start to get collaborative where you create mutuality so that you're creating that more win-win dynamic. You should very rarely be negotiating with another agent, right? Because it's all academic at that point. Let's get to a favorable position on both sides to where we can create a win. So most of the things that we ever really negotiate, particularly post-acceptance of the offer, is if there's a change in the appraisal of the property, right? That's where I see things get mostly contentious. Sometimes there could be conditions that have condition issues of the property that happen during the course of an inspection. Those are also points of negotiation. Again, do your level best to always create a win-win dynamic. Okay, we see the deck outside is rotted. I know you said the seller wants to take away this. What's the best way for us to resolve this? Get collaborative, guys. Don't get adversarial. Okay, and again, define your value in the transaction. Who are you? What are you bringing to the table? What is your leveraged position? Make sure you checked your ego at the door. That's a killer. Guys, ego is fear. Ego is almost 100% fear-based. We can be confident without being an egotist, right? Check your ego at the door. It's not about you, it's about the deal. It's about how can we successfully facilitate this deal, right? The outcome should always be a win-win dynamic. You should, in advance, outline your must-haves. What are the things that absolutely need to exist for this deal to be successful and accepted? Outline the things that will absolutely kill the deal. I can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. If the buyer is capped at a certain price point, there's very little that we can do in some cases, right? Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. But if a buyer's at a certain price point, sometimes we can't push above that ceiling. Make sure that your goals are aligned before you start the negotiation. Again, it's not about the me, it's about the win-win. And if you're working with the buyer or if you're working with the seller, make sure that you're aligned with their goals. It's not your goals, it's their goals. Make sure that you're aligned. Don't be afraid to be specific and direct. Again, some of us don't have that level of confidence to where we feel like we can be specific and direct. We feel that being specific and direct is pushy or too aggressive, and we don't want to be too aggressive because, again, they may not like me if I'm too aggressive. They may find me objectionable if I'm too aggressive. If I'm specific and direct, I'm merely telling you these are the things that need to happen or we'd like to see happen. Start your negotiation from a top-down position. What do I mean by that? Ask for what you want. If you want an $800,000 for the sale of your property, start at $800,000. Don't start, or your commission. If you're a 5% player or a 6% player, ask for your commission. I'm a 5% guy. This is why. I'm a 6% guy. This is why. Negotiate from a top down. You can always be flexible and go backward. You can never go upward. You can't start at, I'll take 4%, but I usually get 5, and I really like 6. Rarely is that a successful negotiation strategy. I've never seen it happen. Well, that's not true. I may have seen it happen because the deal got complex, but it's much easier to negotiate from the top down than from the ground up. Okay. Be prepared to do some tough negotiations. It'd be great if negotiations were just, oh my God, I love your ideas. These are great. Let's move forward. It doesn't happen like that. Again, it doesn't mean that we're being adversarial, but if we're firm, if we're direct, if we know what our goals are and we've outlined the must-haves and the deal breakers, then sometimes it may take a bit. Again, there may be multiple stakeholders that are involved in this process. We want to make sure that we identify everybody who could affect the deal. Okay, so be prepared to do tough negotiations. And I can't stress, come prepared. Most of you, let's be honest, if we're being true to ourselves, most of us don't do enough preparation when we're going out to do a deal. We may pull a CMA, but we haven't anticipated what our objections might be, or we haven't anticipated what might be roadblocks or hurdles that prevent us from being successful in the deal. Guys, come prepared. I know this all sounds like basic, it's academic. Oh my God, I should just know these things. But when we get in the moment, sometimes our fear takes over, it hits us in the throat, and we get lost in our strategic behavior. Okay? So as we talk about what our strategic plan should look like, don't be afraid of the no. Start off in that position. Don't be afraid of the no. The no is sometimes your opportunity to work, right? Sometimes if everything was a yes, we'd be great order takers. But you can anticipate the no in our business because we're going to get a lot of them, be it from the first time we pick up a phone to prospect to someone, to us actually getting the appointment and meeting with the seller, or us meeting with the buyer. We're going to get some no's. We got to be prepared for the no. Don't be afraid of that. First and foremost, it's part of your business. Establish your BATNA prior to the negotiation. What is your BATNA? Your BATNA is the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Sometimes we can't always get what we want in a negotiation, so we have to identify what is the best next alternative solution. Guys, in the little time that we have left, one thing I suggest to all of you is sometimes when you're going out on a listing appointment, and I know this is very old school, some of you still do this to this day just like I do, we always take out with us an exclusive authorization and right to sell agreement, right? That's true of most of you, right? That's the gold standard where we get paid no matter what. Sometimes when we're talking about establishing our value, take out an open listing agreement or take out an exclusive agency agreement, which still allows the seller to market the home in the way they see fit. But if you bring a player to the table, guess what? You get paid. And you've now demonstrated your worth, right? Chances are that seller is going to say, oh my God, this is exhausting. I don't want to interview anybody else. Let me just continue to go with this person because I can see their value and what they're willing to do. If you're willing to take away or risk the opportunity of you not getting paid and you put in work, the seller knows you're the real deal. Okay? I do that all the time. I encourage my agents to do that all the time. It's important to identify the intangibles. Sometimes there are little things that are unstated that are not on the table. Seller wants to get $800,000 or $1 million. Why does the seller want to get $800,000? Do they have to pay off debt? Do they need that money to purchase their next house? Are they taking care of an elder or a child? What's the purpose for them needing that specific stated item, right? Identify the intangibles. That increases your negotiation skills. It helps you to understand what the behavior is more readily. And again, what's important to the stakeholders that are not on the table? Are there other stakeholders? In other words, does the seller already have an identified property to where they're going to move? There are additional stakeholders that are involved. So we need to be aware of that. Ask lots of questions. Nothing new, guys. Questions are part of effective communication. And these questions should be open-ended. I'm sure most of you understand the difference between open-ended and closed-ended questions. Closed-ended questions only elicit the yes or no. We want to ask questions like, so, Mr. Seller, tell me a little bit more about what your replacement home strategy looks like. Things like that. That's an open-ended question. It allows the seller to tell you more about their situation so that you can help them make informed decisions. Okay? Create a natural partnership. Again, the win-win strategy is all about a natural partnership, whether it's the client or whether it's another agent or someone else that's specific to the deal. Okay? Employ respect frequently. Let them know that you respect their position and their process, and you'll get the same respect in return. Okay? When we make it about us, it tends to disrespect others because we're saying, I know what's best. I know how to go about this. This is me. I've done this 100 times. Sit over in the corner and just watch me work my magic, right? Not a great look for an agent, in my opinion. Okay? There are those who are out there. Always exercise good judgment. Guys, I hope you found today's presentation useful. I hope that you employ some of the skills and impart some of the language that you've learned today. Obviously, this is ongoing. You're not going to be a super skilled professional right away. These are things you have to practice. That's why I always encourage getting a coach. Many of you know I'm a real estate coach. It's important for you and your business to take that position. The difference between coaching and training is that short-lived event that imparts knowledge, right? You read a manual on how to turn your TV on or set up your Fire Stick or something like that. That's training. Coaching is taking what your natural skills and ability is and helping to shape and adding different tools so that you can start to realize a more favorable outcome. Okay. So that being said, I'd like to, one thing I want to do before I invite Kiara Tahani to our panel is let you guys know I have something special I'd like to share with everybody today. And it's a simple thing. So if you guys found value in the presentation today, and you've got a peer, or even if it's you and you're not part of Radius Agent Realty, I'd love to invite you into just a 15-minute conversation to talk about how we can help to increase what you're doing or not doing right now to help you achieve your goals. So I'd like for each and every one of you that's on this webinar today to refer a person, even if it's you, to me or to my recruiting team, so that we can start to have a meaningful dialogue with those people so that we can help them to get to where they want to be. And as an act of kindness for you doing that for me, which is referring someone to me, I'd like to offer each and every one of you a $10 Starbucks gift card just for referring that person. Okay. So that's my gift to you today. Again, a mutual thing. I'm looking forward to meeting the people you know, or even you yourself, if you find that you can benefit from this. Okay. This is my contact information. You guys will be getting the deck. Again, I would like to meet with each and every one of you just to talk a little bit about your business or some of the deficits that you feel that may be hindering your business, or the things that you think that you're doing well that you'd like to impart to others. Okay, so you'll be getting my email address, but book a 15-minute session with me so we can talk a little bit about your business, talk a little bit more effectively about Radius Agent and how you might be able to benefit from that. I'm going to bring on Kiara Tahani, who is the Vice President of our Agent Growth Sector, to just tell you a little bit more about Radius Agent. Put this in your calendars, guys. The next webinar that we'll be doing will be on Wednesday, November 17th at 10 a.m. And we'll be talking about the basics of lead management. These all couple in together, negotiating how we manage our leads. These all are hand in hand. Again, these are practice tools that we need to do on a daily, weekly, and monthly in order to create effective results for our business. Okay? Without further ado, let me introduce to you Kiara Tahani to tell you a little bit more about Radius Agent and get you guys on calendar so that we can talk to each and every one of you about the benefits that we offer.
Thanks, Dee. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Hi, all. Kiara. I'm Kiara. It is great to see so many familiar names and new names today on Dee's fantastic presentation regarding the art of negotiation. Dee, awesome info. I think everybody really appreciated the length in which you went to present this information. So thank you. Many of you are already a member of our 70,000 and growing strong community for the Radius app, but it's possible that you might be unaware of the benefits of the brokerage here at Radius. So you can see on our screen that we really do welcome you to take a peek at our website and learn more about our agent-centric brokerage, focused on integrated technology that allows each agent to really build and grow their own brand, with plenty of other offerings from training and mentorship, like Dee mentioned, along with financing programs for your clients that might make each of those deals a little bit easier. I also like to think that we've made the negotiation process that many of you are familiar with from a traditional brokerage standpoint a bit easier. And by easier, I mean, we've removed the commission conversation and split altogether, and we empower each agent to retain their hard-earned dollars and treat each client opportunity as they need to grow their business. So we're here to work really hard for each of you. It's not about us, it's about you, the agent that is powering and growing our industry. We'd love to learn more about your goals and what it is that you'd like Radius to help you accomplish in 2022. So as a follow-up for today's webinar, we'll not only be sharing the recording and the deck and all of the information for contact, along with the registration link for the most recent live webinar that Dee just mentioned, which is going to be the basics of lead management. We hope that you'll attend that one as well. And of course, you'll have the opportunity to meet with myself and our incredible team here at Radius. I'm looking forward to all of you and joining the team or having some conversations that come next. And thank you again for attending today's session and taking the time to invest in yourselves and your business. Appreciate everyone.
Thank you, Kiara, for that. Guys, we've got a few minutes left. Are there any questions specific? Go ahead and throw them down in the chat that we can review, or anything that anybody wants to share. I have to get close enough to the screen to make sure I see it. Okay, guys, well, if there are no other questions, I see a couple people are typing.
Oh, I think we got a good one, Dee.
Yeah, what do you encourage all of your agents to bring with them on a listing appointment? What documents? Again, please. Okay, so a listing appointment, everybody does a little bit differently. But I will tell you this, the presentation isn't what you bring with you, right? As a matter of fact, I encourage my agents every time they go on a listing appointment to put their binders, their laptop, their tablet, their phone underneath the table until after you've had conversation with the seller. Sometimes that packet that you have in front of you is an impediment because the other side is already looking for you to bust out whatever you put in that folder or on that tablet. So they're not focused on the conversation, which inhibits active listening and that effective communication. Right? It doesn't present an opportunity for you to collaborate initially. So the things that you primarily need on a listing appointment are a comparative market analysis so that the seller can derive a true and realistic picture of what the home should be listed for, and a listing agreement. I'm all about the sign it now, right? Why wait for a couple of days? Why wait for a couple of weeks? I'm here right now. Are all the decision makers present? Let's make a decision today, right? You've got me in the room. Ask me the questions that you're not quite sure about. Typically, any hesitation has to do with us not providing enough information for the seller to create an informed decision. And again, by putting your collateral material away when you first arrive, after you've toured the house and you're sitting at the table, it allows for a more open and effective dialogue so that you can get to yes language, answer any objections that may present themselves, and be able to move on to the signature phase of the negotiation. Did that help? Will there be a webinar on scripts and dialogues? Absolutely. So second week in December or third week in December, we will be doing a webinar on scripts and dialogues. Again, I'm a huge fan of scripts and dialogue. Huge, huge, huge. Yeah, so we will be having scripts and dialogue. Again, if you're concerned now, and most of you should be in a prospecting phase because you don't want to hit January 1 starting off prospecting, because that's going to ruin your momentum for the first quarter of 2022. So start prospecting now. Guys, there are still 29 prospecting days left in 2021. Most, if not all of you, can get one deal into contract between now and December 31, 2021. Don't take your foot off the gas right now just because we're in quote unquote holiday season, right? Holiday season presents great opportunities because you've got a lot of practitioners who feel that their bag or their belly is already full and they're like, you know what? I'm going to take these 2 months off and get started again in January. That leaves a whole slew of folks who've been waiting all year to have an opportunity to where competition is less, the opportunity for the win is greater, and that's now. So guys, all of you should be absolutely prospecting every day right now. And literally prospecting is not an all-day activity, it's an hour a day. If you're time blocking effectively, then you should all have at least an hour a day, an effective hour, not noon or not midnight when you won't have any opportunity to speak with someone, but early in the morning or later in the evening. When I'm prospecting, I like to get on someone's calendar early. What's the best time to get on someone's calendar? In the morning, right? Because they're preparing mentally for what they have in store for their day, and I want to be one of those tasks. So I typically reach out to people in the morning to get on their calendar for later that day, okay? But there will be some very detailed scripting, scripts and dialogues. And I will also be going over closes, different types of closes, how to exercise tie downs, when to use those things. And guys, these are all part of your sales bat utility belts. All of you should be Batman at this point. You got that utility belt where you can whip out the tools that you need whenever you need them, okay? All right, guys. Oops. All right. So I am really thankful that all of you showed up. Let's see. I'm really thankful that all of you showed up. I appreciated spending some time with you guys. If there are no further questions, I am absolutely looking forward to seeing you guys on an individual level, and I will see you next webinar. Have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday and be productive.